There is a record in Latin music that the industry decided quietly would never be broken. Not because nobody was talented enough, not because nobody would ever be popular enough, but because what it took to set that record, the specific combination of artists, timing, cultural moment, and global reach, felt like something that could only happen once. That record has stood for years, untouched, unchallenged, quietly sitting at the top of music history like a monument nobody expected to see moved. And then, Bad Bunny pulled up and tied it. We need to talk about what just happened, because the headline does not begin to cover it. Shh, turn the volume up, but keep it low. This is Rap Deepest Secrets, the one place the labels can't control, exposing the codes, the cover-ups, the real cost of fame. Now back to the video. The year was 2017. Luis Fonsi and Daddy Yankee released a song called Despacito. If you were alive in 2017, you already know what happened next. Despacito did not just become a hit, it became a global phenomenon. One of those once-in-a-decade cultural moments where a song escapes the music industry entirely and just takes over the world. Every country, every language barrier, every age group. Despacito was everywhere. And then they released the remix with Justin Bieber, and it went somewhere that the original had not even reached. The remix of Despacito, Luis Fonsi, Daddy Yankee, Justin Bieber, sat at #1 on the Billboard Hot Latin Songs chart for 56 consecutive weeks. 56 weeks! That is more than a year. That is 13 full months of sitting at the very top of the most closely watched Latin music chart in the United States. Not dipping, not disappearing for a few weeks and coming back. Sitting at #1, continuously, for 56 weeks. The industry looked at that number and made a silent collective decision. That is the ceiling. That is the record that does not get touched. Before we go further, it is important to understand exactly what this chart measures, because the number 56 only becomes truly staggering once you understand what it takes to stay at the top of it. The Billboard Hot Latin Songs chart is not a popularity poll. It is not based on vibes or cultural buzz or critical reception. It is a hard, weekly, data-driven ranking that tracks streams, airplay, and sales across the United States, weighted and blended into a single number that determines where each song ranks. In an era where streaming numbers shift daily, where TikTok sounds explode and vanish in 2 weeks, where the average song's cultural lifespan has shrunk dramatically, staying at #1 on this chart for any extended period is a genuine achievement. Staying there for a week is hard. Staying there for a month is remarkable. Staying there for 56 consecutive weeks is the kind of thing that gets written into the history books of an entire genre. Which is why what Bad Bunny's DtMF just did is so significant. DtMF, the lead single from Bad Bunny's Debí Tirar Más Fotos album, has just reached 56 consecutive weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot Latin Songs chart. 56 weeks, matching the record set by Despacito Remix, the song that everyone agreed was untouchable. In the most recent tracking week, DtMF recorded nearly 8.9 million streams in the United States alone, a slight 4% dip from the previous week, which, let's be very clear, is the kind of dip that most artists would describe as the peak of their entire career. Nearly 9 million streams in a single week in a single country, more than a year after the song was released. That is not a hit fading out. That is a song that has been absorbed into the daily listening habits of millions of people so completely that it just keeps performing at an elite level week after week after week. Here's where this story gets genuinely interesting. The record Bad Bunny just tied is not just any record. It is specifically the record held by a song that features Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber, the same artist who just months earlier was publicly protective of Bad Bunny's Coachella headliner Billie Eilish, the same artist whose Super Bowl halftime show slot Bad Bunny himself headlined, the same Justin Bieber that gave the remix of Despacito its crossover reach by singing the chorus in a language that was not his own, to an audience that had never heard Luis Fonsi or Daddy Yankee before. In 2017, Justin Bieber helped push a Latin song to a record that felt permanent. In 2026, Bad Bunny, performing entirely in Spanish, requiring zero crossover compromise, needing no English language feature to reach global scale, has matched that same number. What that comparison tells you about how the landscape of Latin music has changed in less than a decade is almost too big to fit into a YouTube video. In 2017, a Latin song needed Justin Bieber to reach this level. In 2026, Bad Bunny got here alone. Let that sink in for a second. Okay, stop right there, because what we just described, the shift from Latin music needs a crossover bridge to reach mainstream America, to Bad Bunny is setting records entirely on his own terms, entirely in Spanish. That is not just a music story. That is a cultural history story. That is a story about power and language and who gets to set the standard. And this channel is the place that connects those dots. We do not just report the chart numbers. We explain what the chart numbers mean. We find the story underneath the milestone, the reason the record matters, the thing that the headline skims past. Subscribe right now. Hit the button, turn on notifications. We're covering the moments that are rewriting the history of music in real time, and we want you here for every single one of them. Subscribe now. Come be part of this community. All right, back to the record, because we're not done. Let's take a step back and look at the full picture of what 2026 has already been for this man. February, Bad Bunny headlines the Super Bowl halftime show. First Latino solo male artist to ever do so. Performs primarily in Spanish in front of over 100 million viewers. The performance becomes one of the most talked about halftime shows in years. Early 2026, Bad Bunny wins Album of the Year at the 68th Grammy Awards for Debí Tirar Más Fotos, becoming one of the very few Latin-speaking albums to win that category in the Recording Academy's history. The Debí Tirar Más Fotos World Tour continues its global run, selling out arenas and stadiums across multiple continents. Paris La Défense Arena, the largest indoor venue in Europe, books him for 2 consecutive nights in July. And now, DtMF ties the all-time record for most consecutive weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot Latin Songs chart in 1 calendar year. At what point does the conversation shift from Bad Bunny is having a great year to Bad Bunny is having one of the most historically significant runs in the history of popular music? Because we might already be there. There is one question sitting at the center of every industry conversation right now that nobody wants to answer out loud. Will DtMF go to 57 weeks? Will it surpass Despacito? Will Bad Bunny, performing in Spanish, without a crossover remix, without a collaboration with an English-language pop star, without any of the traditional machinery that Latin music used to depend on to break through in the American market, will he set the new all-time record? At nearly 9 million streams a week in the United States, a year plus into its chart run, with a world tour actively driving new listeners to the catalog, with a Grammy win still fresh in the cultural conversation, the numbers say yes. The momentum says yes. The trajectory says yes. But records have a way of feeling impossible right up until the moment they are broken. And Despacito has sat at the summit for so long that even now, with Bad Bunny standing right next to it, it feels surreal to say that the record might fall. It might fall this week. It might have already fallen by the time you watch this video. And if it does, if DtMF becomes the new all-time record holder for consecutive weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot Latin Songs chart, the significance of that moment will take years to fully understand. There is a version of this story that is purely about numbers, chart positions, streaming figures, record books, and milestones. But there is a bigger version. Despacito in 2017 was a watershed moment because it proved that a Latin song could cross over into the mainstream American music consciousness at an unprecedented scale. It broke barriers. It opened doors. It changed what major labels believed was possible for Spanish-language music in the United States. DtMF in 2025 and 2026 is a watershed moment for a completely different reason. It is not crossing over. It is not meeting the mainstream in the middle. It is not compromising, adapting, or translating itself for a wider audience. It is simply being what it is, deeply Puerto Rican, deeply personal, rooted in a specific culture and a specific community, and accumulating almost 9 million streams a week in the United States because the audience came to it. The audience learned the language, the audience sought out the context, the audience did the work of meeting the music where it lives. That is the real record being broken, not just 56 weeks at number 1, the record of who has to adapt to whom. 56 weeks, the same number that Despacito Remix, Luis Fonsi, Daddy Yankee, Justin Bieber put on the board in 2017 and that the music industry decided was permanent. DtMF, Bad Bunny, alone, in Spanish, no remix, no crossover feature, has matched it. And the week after this video drops, that number might be 57. And if it is 57, and then 58, and then 59, the history of Latin music will be rewritten in the most understated, week-by-week, streaming number way imaginable. No announcement, no ceremony, just a chart update on a Tuesday that changes everything. That is how history usually moves. Not all at once, not with a proclamation. 1 week at a time. If this video made the chart record feel like more than just a number, share it with someone who needs to hear the full story. And if you are not subscribed yet, this is what this channel does every time. We take the milestone and we show you what it means, the history it sits inside, the shift it represents, the reason it matters beyond the headline. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and come back for the next one, because the record might already be broken by morning.